Okay, calm down.
Tell us about the One Fair Wage Coalition, what it is and what it does.
So we are a national organization of 300,000 restaurant and service workers and about 3,000 restaurant owners, all working together to fight to raise wages across the country, particularly in the service sector, and to end all subminimum wages in the United States. You know, we're going through an incredibly historic moment. We've been at this for over 20 years. We're going through an incredibly historic moment where millions of workers are refusing to work for subminimum wages. Thousands of restaurants are raising wages to recruit staff. And so we decided it was time to go big, very historic moment. We are moving bills and ballot measures in 25 states by the United States 250th anniversary, which is 2026. We call it our 25 by 250 campaign. And New York is one of 25 states that are on a pathway to end subminimum wages. We already won this last year in both DC and Michigan. It's already the law in 7 states. So New York really needs to follow, not even lead at this point, but follow the trend of what's happening.
Tell us about the history of this movement.
Sadly, this whole issue has an incredibly racist history in the United States. So tipping originated in feudal Europe. It was something that aristocrats and nobles gave to serfs and vassals, but always on top of a wage. Serfs and vassals in feudal Europe got wages. They didn't live on tips. And that idea came to the States in the 1850s when rich Americans came to the U.S. and started showing off that they knew the rules of Europe. And at first, Americans resoundingly rejected it. 7 states passed bans on tipping. But in 1853, waiters in New York, who are mostly white men, didn't get tips, lived on wages, went on strike for a higher wage. And in response, the restaurant industry started looking for cheaper labor. First, they replaced them all with white women, trying to pay them less. And then after 1865, saw newly freed slaves as an opportunity to basically get free Black female labor and tell these workers, sorry, you're not going to get a wage from us. You're going to have the privilege and opportunity of getting white people's tips. In 1919, the National Restaurant Association formed in an effort to solidify that into law, to make it law that these workers didn't get a wage, they only got tips. And they succeeded in 1938 as part of the New Deal when everybody else got the right to a federal minimum wage, but these workers were excluded. In 1960, New York passed its own state minimum wage and followed the federal in excluding these women from getting an actual wage. And every time since 1960 that New York State has raised its wage, these women have been left out. Now, I will say, meanwhile, in that time period since 1960, 7 states have gotten rid of this system: California, Oregon, Washington, Nevada, Minnesota, Montana, and Alaska. All require a full minimum wage with tips on top. And despite what you might hear from the Restaurant Association, those 7 states actually have higher restaurant sales per capita than New York, higher job growth than New York. We have higher tipping averages here in San Francisco than New York City. We have higher small business women and people of color own businesses in California than New York State. So look, it is proven not only to work, but to actually be more successful to pay people a full minimum wage with tips on top. It is simply the ongoing money, power, and influence of that trade lobby, the National Restaurant Association, over the last 100 years since 1919 to basically ensure that they alone and nobody else doesn't have to pay the minimum wage.